I'm Stuart McIntosh with the BBC News. Hello. The United States and NATO have told the Kremlin they'll not bow to its security demands on Ukraine and Eastern Europe. The US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, said he'd laid out a principled and pragmatic evaluation of Russia's concerns in a formal response to Moscow. Barbara Plett-Usher reports.
This is the written response for which Russia has been waiting. Mr. Blinken said it contained no surprises, that the U.S. had not given up any ground on core principles, such as NATO's open-door membership policy and its military presence in Eastern Europe. But he said the Americans had also outlined areas where they felt they could work with Russian security concerns over missile placements and military exercises. The U.S. offers were echoed by NATO in a separate document. They fall far short of what Russia wants, and the Kremlin has warned it will not let its proposals drown in endless discussion. So although this step keeps open a diplomatic path, it is no clearer where that's leading.
The Kremlin's Deputy Chief of Staff, Dmitry Kozak, has described 8 hours of talks on the conflict in eastern Ukraine as not easy and leaving many issues unresolved. But Russia, France, Germany and Ukraine have agreed that a ceasefire be observed in the region that Russian-backed fighters have occupied for almost 8 years. The Liberal Justice Stephen Breyer is retiring from the US Supreme Court at the end of June. Justice Breyer was appointed in 1984 from Washington. Here's Gary O'Donoghue.
At 83, Stephen Breyer is the oldest justice on the court, though there is no requirement to retire as it's an appointment for life. However, the political realities mean that the window for Joe Biden to get someone confirmed of his choosing is a narrow one, as elections later this year could see Republicans return a majority in the Senate, which is the body that gets to approve nominees. In truth, though, whoever replaces Justice Breyer won't decisively change the nature of the court, given its current 6-3 balance in favour of Conservatives.
The US Central Bank says it could raise interest rates in March and end its bond purchases. The Federal Reserve left interest rates unchanged at 0 for now, but stressed that the labour market was strong and inflation running well above 2%. Here's our North America business correspondent, Michelle Fleury.
This would be the first increase in 3 years as inflation casts a shadow over the world's largest economy. Back in March 2020, to shelter the US economy from the worst effects of the pandemic, America's central bank cut interest rates essentially to 0. But with the job market strengthening, officials are under pressure to act again, this time to rein in inflation, as prices in the US rise at the fastest rate in almost 40 years. The central bank's focus on inflation seems to have unnerved Wall Street. US stock markets fell sharply.
This is the latest world news from the BBC. 9 human rights organisations have said Poland's near-total abortion ban has had a devastating impact on women's lives. Their joint statement came on the eve of the first anniversary of the law taking effect and just days after another woman died when doctors refused to perform an abortion. Russian military contractors have written to the coup leaders in Burkina Faso offering to train their forces in the fight against Islamic militants. The coup leaders have accused the ousted government of not giving them enough support in the fight against the Islamists. Our senior Africa correspondent Anne Soy reports.
The offer is explicit. If Russian instructors are invited to train the army in Burkina Faso, it says, they can do it effectively. The letter, which has been verified by a Russian security advisor to the Central African Presidency, also takes a swipe at the French-led offensive against extremists in the Sahel. Despite leading the operation for over a decade, it claims they've had no success and adds that the Russian group can help the Burkinabe soldiers to master the security situation in very little time.
More than 8 million people have tested positive for coronavirus in the Americas in the past week, a new record for the region. The Pan American Health Organization says Omicron has now become the prevailing variant of the virus. Most of the cases have been reported in the United States, but there's been a surge in infections across the region. In Brazil, the number of cases has gone up by almost 200% in a week. At the Africa Cup of Nations football tournament, Egypt have beaten Ivory Coast in a penalty shootout. Egypt will play Morocco in the quarter-finals. Before the kick-off, there was a minute of silence held to remember the 8 lives lost at the Olembe Stadium on Monday. BBC News.